good afternoon and welcome. I'm Jane Clayson, the Head of Digital Delivery and PMO at York and Scarborough Acute Trust, and I want to thank you for joining the NHS Project Futures Compass 22.3 event today. Just to clarify, this is the practical tips and support on benefits management from the Frontline Digitisation programme session. Just before I hand you over to Paul Maughan and ADAIR, our speakers for this session, I just want to let you know the format of this virtual event. You'll see on the right of your screen a panel detailing chat, Q&A and feedback. The chat is there for you to share comments, etc. And the Q&A is for you to put questions to Jo and Paul as you think of them. And finally, a feedback form to complete at the end of the session. Depending on how many questions have been posed, we'll bring up the Q&A session to share the top ranked questions to put to the presenters and get their thoughts and feedback. So without further ado, I'll now hand over to Paul and Jo.
Thanks, Jane. So welcome to our session. We're going to be talking you through some practical tips and some support with benefits from the Frontline Digitisation programme. So with two parts to our session. The first part of the session, I'm going to take you through the benefits support offer for the Frontline Digitisation programme. But if your organisation isn't part of the programme at the moment, please don't worry, because much of this support and information is open to anyone that works in health and social care. So I'll talk you through the offer. There are 3 tiers to our benefit support offer, and these range from self-service tools and templates right the way through to training and then to bespoke subject matter expert support with benefits. We have a number of tools and templates that are open to organisations through the Future NHS platform, and that platform is accessible to anyone who's working in or for health and social care. We've got training on 2 levels. Again, that's open to anyone in health and social care. And then the specific subject matter expert support is just for organisations that are receiving funding from the FD programme. So I'm going to go through each offer in a little bit more detail. Firstly, we have some benefits artefacts, so our tools and templates. And these are all available through the Quality Improvement Workspace on the Future NHS website. If you request to join the website, or if you're a member already, there is a link on our agenda page for Futures and for all of the workspaces that I mentioned as part of this presentation, so you can access them afterwards. We've got some template documents up there. So we've got a benefits strategy document and a benefits toolkit, including a register and tracker. These can be tailored for local use if you'd like to amend them. The benefits register and tracker does match the system that we use for reporting benefits as part of the Frontline Digitisation programme. So if you are an FD funded organisation and you use this tool, you will have all of the information that you need to report back your benefits to us nationally. We've formatted that way specifically. We've also got up on there some searchable spreadsheets of benefits that have been realised by organisations who took part in the Global Digital Exemplar programme. So these are validated benefits with the descriptions and the calculations and the assumptions from electronic patient records implementations that took place within the GDE programme. And you can have a look through those and see how they've been calculated and how they've been named and things like that. We have a benefits calculator tool that covers things like travel costs, staffing costs for NHS and for local authority staff, and things like environmental benefits, so carbon offsetting for paper, for travel, and for the use of virtual clinics. And we update these tools regularly. We are still working on this workspace, so we've got some more tools that are in development at the moment. We're looking at benefits FAQs, some more work around environmental benefits, and then some things related to the core capabilities for electronic patient records. So we're going to add to this site as more resources become available. but the tools that are up there, you can download, you can use, you can amend them if you want to for your own local context. So the next part of the offer is around our benefits management training. Our training is generic, so it's not specific to the FD programme, and it's not even specific to digital programmes. It's very practical, and we talk you through some tools and templates that are useful for anyone who manages benefits. So you can request to join our benefits management training workspace. Again, the link to do that is on the agenda. The foundation training is an on-demand webinar that you can access as and when you please, and that lasts for around 45 minutes. That gives you some general theory on benefits management. And then once you've done the foundation training, if you want to, you can sign up for our advanced training, which is an interactive practical session, which we do through Teams. So we talk you through how to use benefit tools like problem statements, benefits maps, benefits profiles. Anyone can sign up to these courses, but we do give priority to those organisations that are part of Frontline Digitisation if the courses are getting full. We're also now working with the Electronic Patient Record Implementation Support Hub. So as part of the Frontline Digitisation programme, we're offering monthly Q&A sessions. So if you've got a specific question or a problem that you want some support with, you can drop into one of those. We've got some lunch and learn sessions booked on a variety of benefits management and quality improvement related topics. So we did one recently all around societal benefits, and we've done one on learning from the GDE programme. We have a benefits and quality improvement forum on the community of practice on the EPR hub. So you can post questions on there, and you can request peer support from other organisations as well. And again, there's a document that's uploaded to the platform with the links to all these futures workspaces if that's something that you're interested in. So the next aspect of the support offer is something that's specific to Frontline Digitisation funded trusts. We have a quality improvement maturity assessment tool, which we will provide to our partner organisations to undertake a self-assessment. So this can calculate scores around benefits and quality improvement maturity, and we will then work with the organisation to develop a bespoke support plan to increase those maturity levels throughout the life cycle of the programme. If you do know who your regional NHS digital engagement lead is, please contact them in the first instance. If you're not sure who that is, just email the Frontline Digitisation mailbox and you can get in touch with us that way. And again, the final part of the offer is something that's available to Frontline Digitisation programme trusts. So you can request expert support from our benefits and quality improvement team throughout the development of your business case, throughout implementation, and throughout the reporting and realisation stage. So all throughout the EPR journey, if there's anything that you're stuck with, you can get in touch and one of our benefits subject matter experts will help you along. So our review is also part of the wider governance arrangements for the programme. Things like the stage reviews, as mentioned this morning, we can provide support with developing the cases, hosting workshops, doing some informal reviews and feedback, and some action planning. And we revisit that at appropriate points as part of readiness preparation and go live. So if you are part of the Frontline Digitisation programme, please get in touch with us sooner rather than later, because we're happy to support everyone on the journey as they go through. So that's an outline of our support offer. I'm going to hand over to Paul now for the second part of the session, which is around some practical tips and tools based on common themes from our Frontline Digitisation reviews.
Brilliant. All right, thanks for that, Joanne. So we can move to the next slide. That'll be fine. Thank you. So these are some of the things that we've looked at specifically. We've been building up over time. I would say that we've been supporting lots of different programs. We've kind of built on that experience over time to produce this kind of suite of tools and support templates and things over time. But we've built those based on a number of lessons learned. And I would say that the top three that we've kind of come up with, and that we see more often than others, are a theme that you've probably heard a lot about today, I guess, which is about starting with the end in mind. Also about the level of detail, so the devil really is in the detail of what you're working with, and essentially not reinventing the wheel. So we'll talk through a little bit of the aspect of each of those. So in terms of beginning with the end in mind, as I said, you've probably heard a lot about that today. I know that this benefits management cycle is based on that of Steve Jenner. We've adopted the principles and the tools that we've added around this have been added ourselves, as I say, through an iterative process over many years of experience of working through this. And I suppose, you know, as you can see there, the cycle's iterative. You can revisit earlier stages at any time. But while all of those stages are equally important, we've seen that really the work on the first part of the benefits cycle, identify and quantify, is the one that time and again doesn't get the attention that it deserves. And understanding the problem that's trying to be solved, you know, understanding the wider organizational context, the strategic context, and any of those potential risks seems to be the bit that people come to at a later date, once we've already passed this initial identify and quantify stage. So if we don't understand where we're heading and the parameters that we're working within, then, you know, how likely are we really to get these things right as we progress? And so for that reason alone, it's really important to get in there as early as possible in the process, and even before that business case is written, to be thinking with the, you know, this benefits management cycle in mind. You know, this is going to lay the foundation for all of the options analysis and the appraisals that you've got to do, and without it, it's unlikely that you're going to have the required detail to justify the investment. And you know, I think what we have seen as well is that some people may inherit a business case that has already begun, and you may think that you're kind of jumping in partway through this cycle. You know, you might think you're in the plan phase, but actually, you know, I would urge you to just take a bit of a look back and think from some of the tools that we're going to kind of outline here to look back, as well as think about exactly where you are right now. And I think a big challenge around this is always time, because it always seems to be a challenge to make the time available for doing this, but it can save you so much time in the long run of rework and additional work in actually starting off on the right foot. But I do appreciate it can be a really challenging time if you inherit a case from someone else. But please, you know, focus on starting in the right place, focus where the problem is, and then identify the positive changes of value to be delivered. And so problem statements, you know, ultimately we want to define what the issue is. And as you can see from the little guy there, we're very good at jumping to conclusions, and we get attached to something, you know, something new and shiny because it sounds great, or it's new and exciting. And the question to ask yourself, though, is, does that actually solve the problem? You know, we've had situations in the past where people have made investments without really thinking and joining the dots. You know, things like buying some equipment. We know of a previous trust who purchased some iPads, which further down the line, it looked like a good way of spending some money at that particular moment in time. But when it came to actually use those throughout the trust, it turned out that they didn't have the infrastructure in place and the connectivity to be able to actually utilize those, and they sat in drawers for months on end. You know, so it's not just about jumping to conclusions, it's about, you know, properly understanding the problem, understanding the situation and how we can make life better without getting too far ahead of yourself and solutionizing really, and looking at that bright new shiny thing without really thinking about the steps that need to be put in place. And to help with that, this is where we look at problem statements. So so we love to use this problem statement template. I think, as you can see there, it's the foundation for a business case. It helps massively with engagement from all levels, all the way from execs down to frontline. It does often work best when you have a group of the key stakeholders together in the room. I think the real value in it is that people at different levels will have different perspectives, and therefore, you know, you really get a good, rich discussion about exactly what problem you're trying to solve. You know, we've seen it in the past where people use aspects of this, so you could have the form started by execs and finished by frontline staff. And it's not always possible, but I think my preference is to work within a workshop where there's a mix of staff from, you know, execs, frontline staff, especially those who'll be taking ownership of the benefits. Because I think gain and buy-in from the staff early in the process is just a real bonus. You know, all staff will, you know, feel part of something and help to shape the benefits and the change that they're going to be going through, as opposed to feeling that that change is imposed on them. So I think that's really important in terms of the engagement, that we don't just, as well as jumping to conclusions, we really involve the people that matter here and the people who are going to be helping to deliver those benefits and essentially undergoing the change. I think where we've used the problem statements in the past, you know, we've had it where people have started a problem statement, brought them to a workshop, and kind of then worked those things up. And I think in general, it just gives a really good sort of outline and the steps to work through. And it links in really well to the next aspect, which is a process map or benefit map that we've got on the slide. Yeah, it's coming in. So I think just to say as well, that the problem statement template is also one of the tools that we have that's available there. So you'd be able to access that through our quality improvement workspace on NHS features. So the benefit map, it's a visual representation of your programme, and it feeds nicely from, or can be fed nicely from, the problem statements. And I think this is where we see that when done in conjunction with each other, this can work really well. Be able to outline the benefits that you'll get, the outcomes, and how the benefits link to your strategic objectives. And I think it's important to make sure that the work's linked back to those local organisational or national objectives. And this is another thing that we see throughout business cases, is that if it isn't linked to those national objectives and it isn't linked to some local objectives that you have, then you have to start to question why you may be doing that particular project. Are there aspects of what you're doing? Now, I suppose from us looking at frontline digitisation and APRs, it is very much a case of, we know that we need to move forward with some of those things, but we're really looking for how strategically we kind of plan that out in terms of benefits mapping. So from our point of view, we don't want to see that there are kind of little pet projects and little things on the side going on. This is really about working back, you know, from the objectives, national and local, strategically. So we always emphasise to move from the right to the left, looking at the objectives of what you want, what you need to see. And this has all helped to be built out through the problem statement and the answers that have been given on the what's been worked up in those previous sort of problem statement workshops. Again, we've got a template for benefits maps that's freely available and accessible through our quality improvement workspace. On. So something that comes up quite often is the difference between an outcome and a benefit, and we commonly see that in business cases that outcomes are considered to be benefits when they're written within the case, and I think this is something that we just see so often, and I think it's important that we just maybe that you maybe use this for reference in future around objectives being the intended goals. Ideally, obviously, from an objectives point of view, we're looking at SMART objectives, but it's really about the vision, and it's about looking of how things will look in the future. And outcomes are the results of the actions that are taken. So an outcome describes what it will be like once the objective is achieved. And I think that where the benefit aspect comes in, quite often people will just get as far as an outcome and leave it there. But what we like to drill down into is really about the value that can be realized by those people who are experiencing the outcomes of the change. You know, benefits are identified sort of during the planning by asking stakeholders to tell us how they believe they'll experience the value of that objective or outcome. So you'll probably see, you know, in previous times, quite a common one that we see is people will talk about the value of time, and we talk about efficiency and time saving being a benefit. However, you know, reducing that time only becomes a benefit if you're able to utilize that time that you've saved. And I think the other aspects that are on that particular slide are just about the other aspects that are within the map on the benefits map. So when you see the template, you'll be able to pull those together. Okay.
So I'm going to talk you through the next section now, and that's around the devil's in the detail. And I think the gist of this section is about the importance of being clear about what your benefits are and how that they've been calculated, so that firstly, they can be validated within the business case, so people can see the change that results in the benefit, how the figures have been worked out, ensure that they're realistic and achievable, and we've not got those biases creeping in that we were talking about earlier this morning. And secondly, to ensure continuity. So when your benefits are handed over from business case to finance, to the programme team, to benefit owners, into business as usual, bearing in mind the timescales for developing a business case, having that approved, procuring your system, implementing the change, then up to 10 years of realisation and monitoring, it's highly likely during that time that people will leave and new people will join. Your programme is going to be closed at some point. Your benefits will be handed over to operations and business as usual. So are your benefits explicitly clear about what they are and where they come from? So firstly, we promote standardised ways of naming and describing benefits to make sure that the appropriate information is captured. And for a benefit name, that is your everyday title, elevator pitch, short and snappy, gets to the point of what this benefit is. So the way that we like to do this is the context and the value. So why is this benefit important? And that links to the problem we're trying to solve and the objectives. The future state, so what will your business as usual look like after? Where does the benefit come from? The main outcome, so what's the key thing that's going to be different? And then if it's not obvious, who gets the benefit? Sometimes we mention the benefit recipient, it may be explicit, but clearly stating who that stakeholder is, it tells a consistent part of that story, because sometimes a benefit might have more than one recipient. So as you can see, for the example that we've given, we're going to improve patient finances as a result of online consultations, reducing travel for the patient. So you can clearly see how what we're implementing, the online consultations, reduce travel for the patient, which will then save them money. So your benefit description then goes into a little bit more detail, and it describes your current and your future state, as well as the work that needs to be done in order to realise it. And your elevator pitch here, you may be, 5 or 6 floors as opposed to 1 or 2. And our top tip for this is to start your benefit description with instead of. So this will get you to think about your current and your future state and highlight the importance of your programme change on delivering that benefit. So in the example that we've given, instead of patients travelling face-to-face appointments, the patients and clinicians will use video conferencing through secure e-clinics. That's the work that needs to be done. This will reduce the need for patients to travel to appointments, decreasing the impact on patient finances. So that's the outcome and the value. So it's a standardised way of naming benefits. Next, the calculations and assumptions. So this is example data. It's not from a real business case, but it is based on things that we've seen in a comprehensive investment agreement model. So anyone from finance will know that term well. And the first box shows a very well written calculation. All the assumptions that have been made have been clearly stated. It tells you what sources have been used to calculate the benefit, and it would be really easy for someone to pick this up and be able to know what to monitor and report on. It's also really clear what assumptions have been made when you've been calculating the benefit. So things like the number of prescriptions we wouldn't expect to change, and what data has been accurately calculated, so the time and motion study. There's a target time, and it tells you that's been based on a new neighbourhood organisation that uses the same system. So it's really easy for someone to be able to monitor and report on whether that target is being met. In the second box, these are things we more commonly see. It just gives you 0.8 whole time equivalents. So we've got no idea how this benefit has been calculated, how realistic it is to achieve, and what work is being done, presumably, to free up this amount of time. We don't know how they've got to what that equates to financially, so what year agenda for change figures have been used. How would you measure and report on this as a benefit owner? It's not even obvious which service or profession it refers to, and the service manager is quite a spurious title, so there could be more than one. It could be that the service manager leaves and is replaced. So who would be responsible for delivering this? Even if you knew that it related to pharmacy, if by the time your business case has been approved and you're part of the programme team, you go to the pharmacy service manager, they could say, well, that wasn't me, I've only started 2 weeks ago. So you need to consider, if you were given this as a benefit owner, would you know how to monitor and report on it? If you are monitoring post-implementation and you find that you aren't realising the benefit, could you go back a step in the process and see what isn't happening in order to fix it? With the first example you could, but definitely not with the second. So on to metrics then for change and for benefits. Another top tip we have is to use information that you already have wherever possible to make things easier to monitor. So some examples of this are things like number of incidents that cause harm, waiting times, and that could relate to specific departments like A&E or for your referral to treatment. Staff turnover and staff sickness are really good proxy measures for staff satisfaction. Similarly, complaints and compliments are really good proxy measures for patient and carer satisfaction. You could look at things like compliance with standards, so particularly around electronic patient records, where you've got that reporting function built in, you can easily see how many falls assessments, how many VTE assessments have been completed. Going back to one of the points that Steve made earlier as well, spend against budget. So if you've got economic and cash releasing benefits, you just need to look at the bottom line and see, has that money actually not been spent in that budget? Can the budget be reduced? Can that be taken out as a saving? So for example, pharmacy drug budget. If you've claimed a benefit of a reduction in drug spend, what's the bottom line there, reduction in that pharmacy drug spend? You can use system data like active users, number of records created, number of records updated. And if you do need to do observation studies, so things like time and motion for how long it takes to do a particular task, consider the cost of recording that benefit and does it outweigh the return? So is it worth someone's time going down to the ward once a month to do a time and motion to monitor and report on this benefit if the benefit is a couple of £100 a year? So is it worth the effort that you're putting in to measure it? And remember, replication. If someone gave you the benefit profile tomorrow, would you know how it's been calculated? Would you be able to monitor and report on it? I'm just going to hand you back to Paul now because he's going to take you through confidence.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Joanne. So one of the things that we see quite a lot is that people will calculate their benefits without really considering the complexity of the change that they're actually undertaking. And so I think this is a factor that's massively underplayed. In the scope of everything that we're trying to do here, what we want to do is make a business case realistic and achievable. And I know that sometimes that might not look great on numbers. And it's one of the challenging conversations that I think we have quite often with trusts is around making things realistic, because people fear that it may not pass muster in terms of achieving in being approved. But I think it is really important that we consider the realistic approach and to make sure that we build in confidence levels to this. And as I said before, it really is about considering the complexity of the change that that you're undertaking. You know, we'll focus on if an individual benefit can be realized fully and on time, and that is that's the majority of things that we kind of focus on. It does link in with cognitive biases, and you know, we've heard a little bit about optimism bias and different things today. In terms of assumptions, you know, the level of that benefit estimated may be wrong, and there could be a whole load of risks that aren't being accounted for. You know, there could be these spanners in the works that haven't been sort of accounted for in any of the financial value and valuation of those benefits. So you know, where things are clear, where you've got clear sources and, you know, clear evidence, your confidence levels will be higher as it's more realistic for you to be able to achieve that benefit. So what we have is we've worked with colleagues over the last few years looking at creating a confidence grid to be able to help to support that conversation, because it's not always an easy conversation to have. quite often the conversation just looks like we're trying to reduce the benefits value, and that's not the purpose. This is about confidence in delivery and being realistic again. So this confidence grid allows you to assess the overall likelihood of the benefits being realised. And as you can see from the grid, the assumptions on the vertical axes there down the left, we've got horizontal axes talking about the risks, the opportunities, and those dependencies. And you know, if something is potentially, if you have something that you've never done before, you're using a whole new team, you haven't got any experience in that delivery, it's quite unlikely that you're going to have no risks associated with it. And where we do get to be towards medium and high, we would expect that there would be a reduction in the benefit values as a result of that. And this confidence grid gives us the opportunity to perform a risk assessment, essentially, and allows a prediction against the level of benefits that you are able to realise. We understand it's not perfect, but it is certainly better than a finger in the air. So that is something that, again, this is something that is a document that's uploaded to our platform as part of the toolkit, and that can be utilised to support evaluation of benefits. And another aspect that quite often is kind of forgotten about a little bit is attribution to the investment that you're actually that the benefits are contributing to. So I think quite often benefits can be multifactorial, and because of that, we need to understand what part of the investment is actually contributing to what. It gives us the opportunity to avoid double counting where other things may be contributing. We can give credit where credit's due to those investments, and if we do have multiple investments that cross over, it means that we can justify, track and report those. I don't think it's an easy thing to do all of the time. Sometimes it can be quite it can be fairly simplistic in some of the aspects of an APR. For example, if an additional purchase of some hardware or something has come in outside of that APR, then we can make a judgment and a reduction in that level of attribution. And we're still, I would say, probably in the early stages of overall understanding greater aspects as we look at convergence benefits and things like that, considering the multifactorial nature of lots of other programs and the investments, the multiple investments that are going on. But broad brush, we push and work with trust to really consider attribution and confidence, to make sure that those benefits are kind of a realistic picture of exactly what is going on with that investment, essentially. And something that I think we've already kind of touched on a little bit about not reinventing the wheel. As you can see, we've got a lot of tools throughout the whole cycle there as well, highlighting on this slide particularly the problem statements, the maps in the development of the business case. But I think one piece of advice would be to use the resources that you have available. Joanne talked about tapping into KPIs and things earlier on, and I think that is really important. Like, don't forget, like ourselves, I would say. You know, we have template documents for problem statements, benefits maps, benefits profiles, benefit realisation plans. All of those things are on NHS features, and we're, you know, although we've talked about our focus being on frontline digitisation, we're more than happy to have conversations with people around benefits management. But I would say also to tap into your networks as well, you know, speak to other organisations who've undertaken similar programmes, similar types of project pieces of work. What were they measuring? How were they finding things? You know, we've got things like the blueprints that are on NHS features as well. There's some really good resources available at our fingertips, and I think that quite often we would be a good place to signpost to some of those, but I think quite often we find that the trusts haven't had the time or been signposted to be able to utilise that information and to be able to digest it. That's the purpose of some, especially the blueprints as well, you know, being able to take the time to review that information, see how that applies to yourself, and then be able to work forwards from there. We also have a community of practice. Joanne mentioned earlier on, you know, the community practice forums on the EPR support hub. You can ask questions, share information. If you've got a challenge with something, you can post it into us. And if we don't know the answer, we will work out the answer, or we work with people who we can start a discussion about how we tackle something, because we don't know all the answers, I think is something to kind of make clear as well. But we have a good, strong, robust approach to how we manage benefits, and we have a way of tackling things as well. So, and we have a strong benefits network. Some of them have probably spoken already today. So we all link into that, and we're more than happy to help with support trusts with developing their benefits. And so they would be our three key areas, really. So begin with the end in mind, and the devil being in the detail. And again, just tap into those resources that you have available, and don't spend your time trying to reinvent the wheel. There's a good chance that somebody else has gone before you and done some of this. So, you know, tap into all of those resources and your networks to get a head start, really, and get yourself moving forward.
Great. Thanks very much, Joe. Thanks, Paul. A really useful tour, I think, really, through the support that's on offer and available. We've got a couple of questions, if we're okay to bring those to you, both on a similar theme. The first one is, please can we clarify what and why we are using attribution?
Okay, so I suppose, particularly when you look at things like key clinical outcomes for patients, so big things at the moment like sepsis, falls, pressure ulcers. There's lots of different initiatives that are going on in NHS organisations to try and combat these. And your EPR might help towards that, but what you need to think about is, if you have a big reduction in falls post the implementation of your EPR, because you've got a new falls assessment and it will alert the staff, and you know you've got some justification for why it's a benefit of your EPR, is that the only thing that's contributing to that reduction in falls? Are there other things that are going on the wards or wherever else that might be claiming some of that reduction in harm as well? So why we use attribution is to try and find out what else is going on in the organisation where there might be some overlap, and agree in advance what proportion of the benefits will be realised by each project because then you don't end up double counting. And, you know, we're saying we've reduced falls by 60%. They're saying they've reduced falls by 60%. So you're in minus figures then for number of falls, which doesn't add up. So it's really important to just think about what else might be going on that might be having the same effect.
And I suppose that comes back then to having some sort of centrality of control over the benefits management within our areas of work, to make sure that there is that single view and that single ability to apportion the benefits that are being claimed.
Yeah, definitely. I think portfolio management of benefits is really important, because these are not just, you know, they're not just digital projects and programs. There'll be quality improvement things, there'll be clinical things going on, even research projects that the trust might be undertaking. There's all sorts of stuff that might be having that effect. So it needs to be centrally collated somewhere in a benefits register. So yeah, absolutely, portfolio management is the way forward.
Yeah, great. If there are any more questions, please do add them into the Q&A section, and we can give those to Jo and Paul to answer. The other one was in a very similar vein, really, and somebody's actually used a very interesting way of describing the duplication and cannibalisation of project benefits with the delivery of subsequent projects. So again, whilst not necessarily double counting, but maybe reusing project benefits that have already been claimed. I suppose it's the same approach, really, isn't it, in that centrality and control of recognising that those have already been used.
It absolutely is, and I think one of the aspects of that is to really understand where you're drawing the line if you're working on another project. So we have that through Frontline Digitisation at the moment, where there are some trusts who are still rolling out an APR at the same time that they know in the future they're going to be moving to another APR. And so it's kind of about drawing that line in the sand so that they're not going to try and claim those benefits within the next iteration of or the next incarnation of the APR that they're going to move towards. So we need to, you know, firmly kind of assure that, to make sure that the never the twain shall meet, really, so that there's no overlap, there's no double count, and that can be quite a challenge, actually, getting to the end of that. But I think being cognizant of everything that's going on is kind of the key aspect for us, because even myself and JOANNE and other colleagues throughout the NHS were having discussions around how do you know about every programme that's going on that affects all of these things. And so I think portfolio management is important, you know, within trusts and within ICSs, but how do we, you know, we have a challenge nationally as well about how we kind of bring all of that together to know what's impacting on what, you know. So it's something that we are aware of, but if we can do our bit locally and within ICSs as well, I think it's a good way to make sure that there's no overlap with any of that.
Thanks, Paul. Can I start another one? Are you aligning your benefits work with NHSE and HEE considering the upcoming merger? Yes,
is the answer to that. NHS England and HEE, I think from our perspective, both sides have got benefits professions. So it'll be a case of bringing those benefits professions together. So there may be some adjustment to what we're doing. I suppose from the Frontline Digitisation perspective, specifically for us, we have outlined the quality improvement strategy that we will be working through for this programme, and that's, you know, just been finalised and outlined and signed off. So chances are that won't deviate much from that, but never say never, because where we see opportunities for good practice and bringing in additional things. And I'll be honest, we've worked with a lot of people in NHS England and Health Education England, and they've worked in our organisation and vice versa. So I think we're all pretty much on the same page with the majority of approaches that we take.
Yeah, and certainly in terms of this programme as well, the Frontline Digitisation is a joint programme across NHS England and NHS Digital, so we are very much working together on this at the moment.
Great, so tapping into all of that experience then, I just wonder what support and offer is available when you look at prioritisation of benefits. So obviously we wish there was enough money. Benefits will go a long way to weighting which projects are approved. Is there any support available to understanding how to weight those benefits?
I apologise. You froze just in the middle of that. I apologise.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't quite catch.
Sorry.
Everything. Would you be able to repeat that? Sorry.
Sure. Yeah. It was just asking about the support available for weighting project benefits. We wish that we could do all of the projects that we want to do, and benefits go a long way to identify which will achieve the most benefit. But then in doing that, is there an opportunity to look at how to weight particular benefits for projects?
I suppose there is. I think we've kind of looked at we've been prioritising quite a bit of core capabilities around EPRs. So we've been looking at things that have been realisable or realised from previous investments as well. So that's what gives us the confidence around some of our some of the benefits that we're suggesting to trusts are not based on sort of finger in the air, excuse me, finger in the air type of benefit outlines or benefit profiles. It really is based on those benefits that we've seen realised. In terms of weighting them, I think it depends on the project. So if we're talking more generally around sort of benefits across the NHS, then yes, there might be opportunity to do that. If we're talking about EPRs, we're very much focused on benefits that are around the core capabilities. So we have a kind of the main focus being about affordability of the case, supporting the affordability, and then also about making sure that we cover the core capabilities and cover all benefit types that are able to deliver those core capabilities as well. So we really focus on all different benefit types. So that probably doesn't answer the question very well. But I think there is scope for it. It's just not something that I've really spent much time thinking about, if I'm honest.
No worries. Thanks for that, Paul. We've got another comment here. Great initiative. Essentially, we are centralising and coordinating our efforts. However, this seems like we would need the correct pathways and mechanisms in place. Who would the centralised benefits log sit with? I presume that's in reference to the upcoming merger.
I'm not sure the full context of that. So
I suppose it's, would there be someone holding a central benefits log to be able to offer advice on benefits being tracked and managed?
So for the Frontline Digitisation programme, we do that. So we centralise ours. So the reporting comes into us. I think more nationally, that's something that I would like to push forward the agenda for that, just to ensure that none of this is forgotten about. And I think this is it's something that we need to be wary of, which is these investments are 10 years in 90% of cases, maybe even longer. So it would make sense that we have somewhere central that everything gets reported to and that there's oversight, so that when this program actually finishes in a few years' time, we are putting in place resources to make sure that there's a continuation of the reporting that comes in, that things are tracked and that people are held to account for the investments, but also we're gathering those lessons learned and we're being able to share the experiences, the good news stories. All of those things are coming back so that we can help support people developing their cases for moving forwards and sharing that benefits evidence as well. So we're putting we've talked a bit about our offering today and talked about the education and support piece, I think, is probably the biggest key to making sure that this happens and continues, you know, and we've done it in a way that we've aligned it with the quality improvement maturity assessment, so that we can track the maturity of organisations. So even trusts who maybe aren't within the FD programme and come to us for money could benefit from you know, looking at their own kind of maturity in relation to benefits, and looking at that and seeing if there are any gaps to plug to support themselves moving forwards.
Thanks, Phil. I'm going to take the opportunity to just sneak one in that's close to our hearts in York. Obviously, in the presentation, you referenced the business case in a single entity. If we're following the HMT and the Green Book approach with a 5-stage business case, what support's available to make sure that it's submission of, for example, an OBC, the benefits are stated, but by the time you get through to FBC, they've been revisited and matured in the right way?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a process in place internally. So it's a proportionate assurance framework, and depending on the level of investment and the risk of the investment, we actually proportionately attribute different levels of assurance. In development of an OBC, so ourselves as the benefits team, we actually we have a team of regional benefits leads who support across those different regions, of which JOANNE supports a couple of regions there. So and I think from our perspective, we work with trusts in advance of that OBC. So again, we want to get in and talk to trusts as early as possible so that we can talk about benefits and have that conversation really at early stages to help develop things. As you go up to OBC, we'll be able to help support the development of that. It will go through the approval process. I don't want to spend too long talking about it, I guess, but we'll go through the approval process, and then it moves on to the next stage for FBC. Again, as part of the output potentially of the approval at OBC stage would be a set of conditions, and sometimes, depending on what happens, depending on how early we get involved, there may be some conditions to help to support the development of the FBC more effectively. So we're basically a touch point all the way through that process. And I think JOANNE touched on it a little bit earlier, where even after FBC and the contract is signed and you're moving past all of that, that isn't the end of the story. That's just where it begins, really. So for us, we're supporting trusts all the way through readiness for go live, and then beyond, when we are expecting benefits to be reported back as well. So as part of the sort of memorandum of understanding and the investment agreement, there is an obligation to report benefits back to us, but we will, as regional kind of benefits leads, be linking in with trusts and supporting that development all the way through the cycle, really. So developing the benefits register, making sure that all of those baseline measures are there, that the forecasts are set. And the good thing between kind of even the business case being signed off and go live, so many things may have changed. So it gives you the opportunity to reforecast some of those benefits and look at things. And then also beyond that, we're also looking at where emerging benefits would come up. So, as things change, you might have put in a change and some benefits that you hadn't considered at the outset have come up, and then we'll be able to work to help support that as well. So it's all the way through the life cycle, really, is the short way of saying that.
That's really helpful, personally, as much as I hope for everybody on the call as well. And I'll certainly feed back into the EPL team to make sure that they get in touch if not already. And thanks for the answers there. Okay, so we're just coming to the end of our time. We've addressed the questions that have been raised. I just want to take the opportunity to thank both Jo and Paul for the presentation today and the offer of support and links that they've provided. And we'll bring the session to a close. Thanks very much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.